Get more now on our top story. In the Turkish downing of a Russian plane, Galip Dalay is the research director at Al-Sharq Forum, a think tank based here in Istanbul. Thanks so much for coming in, Galip. There have been some very strong words traded between Turkey and Russia. Russia calling it a stab in the back. Sergei Lavrov, as I said, canceled his meeting. He was supposed to be here today. But now we're hearing some downplaying. Russia trying to invite Turkey into a coalition to fight against Daesh. Where do you think this stands?
Well, I mean, yesterday, that's why yesterday's very high words were not very real, because in the end, the situation between the two countries is extremely important too. I think the two countries see a very much interest in downplaying it. Nevertheless, downplaying doesn't mean forgetting about it. I think Russia has registered this, and Russia will try to take in one way or another, will try to retaliate it. Nevertheless, it's not going to be a dramatic retaliation. It is much more likely to be a face-saving retaliation rather than a dramatic one, because I don't think that the country can afford to further going for confrontation.
We say that, but it's interesting because the divide was so clearly marked when Putin said that Turkey acted as an accomplice of terrorists by shooting down that plane. That comes back to Turkey's definition of terrorist versus Russia's definition of terrorist in this conflict, does it not?
Well, it's not just about Turkey's definition of terrorist and Russia's definition of terrorist. It is Russia's definition of terrorist plus Iran and Syrian regime versus the NATO, US and Europe and Turkey's definition of terrorist. Everyone agrees on ISIS being a terrorist organization. That's granted. But nevertheless, the main target of the Russian strikes, firepower in Syria, was not ISIS. It is rather the forces which Barack Obama called will take part in the future of Syria. So here we have a clear disagreement between Russia, pro-regime Russia, and the anti-regime coalitions. The anti-regime coalitions see most of the groups that Russia is right now targeting as the groups that will form the part of the future of the Syria, be it the Turkmen groups, be it the legitimate Syrian opposition, etc., etc. Whereas Russia sees this, puts them all into basket of terrorism, and that to some extent is understandable. Yesterday's Putin's language, because it was primarily aimed at the domestic consumption rather than for anything serious.
Okay, but how? We're going back to the fundamental question in all of this. How do we reconcile that?
Well, I mean, it is very hard to say ABCD roadmap. First and foremost, it is contingent upon Russia, how it is going to take this. Is it going to take it as a first step to further escalate the tension, which I think is unlikely? Russia will take some steps, especially in the economic fields, etc., etc. But nevertheless, both Russia and the NATO countries, because NATO, the US, also all major Western powers, call for calm.
But if they can't decide on unity against a common enemy, this conflict will continue.
The trouble is that they do agree to some extent on common enemy. Discursively, everyone did not ISIS as the enemy number one. But the trouble starts, what is the goal? What is the goal?
Yeah.
What is the main goal? Here we have different groups with cross purposes.
Okay. Galip, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for coming and sharing your insight as always.